Well, here we are again for another wonderful episode of How to Be a Texan. Kevin, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm wonderful.
You seem a little mellow.
No,
today.
No. Don't mistake hunger for mellowness. And
Hunger? Are you hungry?
I'm always hungry, but I'm especially hungry thinking about what we're going to talk about today. And it's yet another cooking episode. You okay with that?
Yet another, like we do this all the time.
Well, we've talked about it a time or two, but you know what? I wanted to really circle back to this because, part of being a Texan is learning how to barbecue. And so I must be a failed Texan because I stink at it. I get stuff out there and it's just charred or it's raw. And then I bring it in and my family's completely dissatisfied. So much that Amy now just starts cooking it anyway. Like she'll just wait for me to leave so she can cook it. And then I come home and try to heroically say, oh, well, I can. And she's like, don't even bother. Now, she did relegate me the other day to some hot dogs. And that's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah? How'd you do on the hot dogs, though?
Fine. How can you screw up a hot dog? So, anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, Kevin, that I've told our people, the 4 people that listen to us, for years now that you have really developed a skill set in cooking and grilling in particular, and you'll have to describe all the different techniques and tools and pits and all that, but I would consider you a pit master because when you cook something, you really take a lot of pride in it, you take time, and it's freaking awesome. And so what I thought we'd do today is just really share your expertise on what you've learned and then teach novices like me on, some of the great things that you've learned over time, so maybe we could aspire to do that. So how's that sound?
So did you eat like a lot of – so, we're talking about backyard barbecue here, right, which is different, right? So at the macro level, there's kind of 3 big styles at the macro level.
All right.
Okay. One is competition barbecue.
All right.
And
that's on all like the Netflix series of the pit masters and barbecuers against each other and all that, right?
There's some of that also, but there's also lots of competitions that you can just attend everywhere, right?
Oh.
There was a competition a couple months ago, right over in Flower Mound. And, then there's various associations that actually run these, right? So there's a KCBS, Kansas City Barbecue Association that runs a certain set of competitions. Then there's other competitions. There's steak competitions. There's an organization that runs those. And these are literally, you go and you kind of camp out, right? So it's not a camp out, but, basically it's like a festival, right?
Yeah.
So you go, you spend the night there, you set up your own little tent, your environment, you bring your grills, your smokers, and then they have very specific rules for those competitions, right?
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll dig into that, right? So, but competition is kind of one distinct style, and it is a style because the flavor there is very different than the other styles, and I'll explain why in a minute.
Okay.
So that's one kind of big category. The other big category is restaurant style, right? Where you want to go, you want to eat at Franklin's Barbecue or Snow's Barbecue or 407 Barbecue here in Argyle, which shout out to 407 Barbecue. We got one of the best barbecue in the state.
It's really good.
Literally right here in Argyle. Yeah, it should make the top 50. And if you make the top 50 in Texas, there's over 4,000 barbecue restaurants. You make the top 50, you're the creme in the world. But anyway, so we got, shout out to that. But, that restaurant style is different than competition style because restaurant style, you got to crank out tons and tons of meat, all day long, and it better be high quality, at a massive volume, right? So that's what restaurant style is about.
But that's not what you cook, though, right?
No, then that's the third category. The third category is your backyard barbecue.
Okay.
Right? And backyard kind of splits the difference between competition and restaurant style.
I see. And
I'll tell you why. So competition style, you're cooking, there's rib competitions, there's brisket competitions, there's steak competitions, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And within those competitions, there are specific rules. So you show up, they give you the rules, and there's a certain time when you have to turn in your, entry for the judges to judge.
Right.
Right. And the judges are trained. They have a specific scorecard that they go through. But if you think about it, right, if you're judging a competition, you're going to sit there and you're going to taste, 200 different entrees of barbecue, right? Or 300 or whatever it is. And so they have a very specific methodology for how they taste barbecue.
Okay.
Right? So in a steak competition, you will go, you get to pick, they provide the steaks so that it's all an equal playing field. You get to pick out, there's kind of a lottery system, you pick out your steaks. And then they have a specific method where they cut, it's always a ribeye steak. They cut a certain part off of that steak that they're going to taste. And then they cut another certain part where they're going to actually look at what that steak looks like on the inside and the outside. Right. Okay. So there's a specific methodology. And so and same with ribs, right? There's a specific methodology of what they're looking for in a rib and what they taste. But because the judge is sitting there tasting, hundreds of these, they follow it to the letter. And basically, you got one bite, right?
Wow.
You got one bite to impress that judge, right? They're not going to eat the whole rib. They're not going to eat the whole steak. They're going to take one bite.
I'll be darned.
And so the idea behind competition barbecue is like loading it up with flavor, like as much flavor as you can possibly get into it, right? And so a lot of that is about, they will do injections into the meat. They'll do like really complex rubs and stuff like that because you only get one shot and that your meat has to shine through with just one bite, right?
Wow.
In competition.
Okay.
But if you pack all that flavor into a restaurant, number one, it's not going to be consistent. Number two, it's good for one bite, but then when you take the second bite, it's a little too much. And then the third bite, you're kind of, okay, I'm done.
Right? Come on, we're going to McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a little too much if you're going to sit there and eat the entire rib. So in a restaurant situation, they're more about consistency and quality. And, you don't have to pack all the flavor into one single bite because a person's going to sit down and eat a whole meal.
Yeah, right.
But because they also have to produce, 300 briskets a day or, 100 briskets a day or whatever, right? They're not going to sit there and do as much preparation to each of these because they just simply don't have time, right?
Yeah.
So they're still going to make good barbecue. Franklin Barbecue is one of the best in the world. He just cranks out hundreds of briskets every day, and they're all of the same quality, right? So the backyard barbecue splits the difference, right?
Okay.
The backyard guy, generally when I go out, I'm not cooking hundreds of briskets. I'm cooking one, right?
Yeah.
And so I can put more flavor into it, but I don't want to take it as far as a competition because then it's going to be like, dude, I can eat one bite of this and I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
So you want it to taste like a meal. So the backyard guy splits the difference between the two.
Okay.
And there's certain techniques that you can borrow from competition to help add flavor to it, and then there's certain techniques that you borrow from the restaurant side of things to help speed up your cooking process and things of that nature. So those are the three kind of macro categories of barbecue.
All right. Well, so tell me, so being in between, you're a good backyard barbecuer as opposed to me being terrible. Do you ever foresee yourself being a competition barbecuer?
I might do that as a hobby, you know, because you can go do, I mean, some people get really serious about competitions. Yeah. Others aren't so serious. A lot of the competitions, if I kind of draw the parallel to, what we did with triathlons or with, biking, we would go to organized biking events or whatever. They're not formal races. You're not out there to try to win the race. You're just there to do well. So there's competitions like that where you just go and it's a hobby and you hang out with your friends and
I just wanted the shirt.
You have a good time.
Yeah. I just wanted the T-shirt. That's all I wanted. And then
from the race,
kind of bragging rights to say, I just did that.
You did it. Yeah. So, I wouldn't mind doing that sometime. It's not a big priority for me because, you got to invest in gear. You got to have grills you can take with you. You need to have a little, tent thing to set up and all that.
I hadn't thought of that.
The rules.
Well, the only reason
stuff to put into it.
The only reason that made me think of that, Kevin, is the rib off that you had a couple of weeks ago with your kids. You were just kind of having fun with it, but the way Andrew told me, it was amazing. So
what we did there was we were trying out two different, and that's a great transition into equipment, right?
Okay.
We were trying out two different types of equipment, but we were cooking the exact same, style of rib with the exact same recipe and the exact same rub, seasoning on it.
Yeah.
And it was a test to see, which style of equipment actually produced the best result, giving all the other variables being the same. So it's kind of fun.
Well, and you were surprised at the outcome. When they chose one over the one that you thought that they would, you were surprised by that.
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, and I chose the one too. It was a unanimous choice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, equipment for the backyard barbecue, let's talk about that for a second. So, there's all kinds of levels of equipment. You can go get, crap that, you can use for a year and it'll basically disintegrate, or you can get high quality stuff that'll last forever that you can hand down to your kids.
Right.
And then there's everything in between, right? So, but there's kind of, I kind of broke this down into, as far as the equipment for the backyard, barbecue / griller.
Okay.
There's kind of 5 categories here that I came up with, right?
All right.
Number one is just a charcoal grill.
Right.
And this is just your traditional, Weber kettle, looks like it's from the 1950s. It's just the metal kettle style with a lid on it. Those are awesome. And if you get just the Weber brand,
that's kind of like Old Faithful,
It's like Old Faithful, and you can do everything in that. You can grill, you can smoke, you can do it all, right?
Okay.
On the Weber kettle. The next kind of category is smokers.
Oh.
And within smokers, there's several subcategories to that, right? There's the offset smoker.
Right.
There's what's called a pit barrel style smoker, and there's what I call a bullet style smoker.
Okay.
And so a grill is primarily, when you're grilling, you got hot coals, you got the grill right over those hot coals, and you're going to cook something really fast.
Okay.
Right? So you're going to put a steak on there. You're going to cook the steak for 4 minutes. You're going to flip it, cook it another 4 minutes, pull it off, and let it rest. That's done, right? So 10 minutes later, your steak is ready. Whereas with a smoker, you're doing what's called low and slow. Mm-hmm. There's also a hot and fast form of smoking, but it's still at a lower temperature and a lot longer than grilling. So in general, smoking is a much longer process, right? And the difference is between the type of meat that you're using, right? So if you're going to take a steak, you can cook that really fast, take it off at a high temperature. It's going to be tender and juicy and great, right? Mm-hmm. If you took a brisket, you put a brisket on there, cooked it really fast, took it off, it's going to be tough as a boot.
Oh, right? Yeah. Right.
Because inside the brisket is a muscle that is used a lot by the cow. So the more a muscle is used, the tougher it is because it has lots of connective tissue in there. And when it's tough like that, you got to cook it low, at a low temperature for a long time.
I see.
And it breaks down all that connective tissue, turns actually into juice and gelatin, and it becomes really, really juicy and tender.
Oh, nice. That's
but it takes a long time to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So smokers are great for that. And while it's also cooking at a low and slow, it's also putting a smoke on it, a smoke flavor, which makes it really, really good. So that's a smoker.
Okay.
Probably kind of the hip thing right now is the big, gigantic smokers that are made from propane tanks. Ginormous propane tanks. They take these, they turn them into smokers, and so the chamber where you put your meat is an old propane tank, and then they'll bolt on a firebox on the side, and that's what an offset smoker is. You got a main cooking chamber, and then you got a firebox on the side where literally you have a live fire going, and that's putting smoke and heat up over, but your meat's not directly over that fire.
Okay.
So propane tanks, that's kind of a Texas thing. It evolved here back in the 70s from the oil industry, and now it's like, the thing, right? So Franklin barbecue, that's the big trend right now. All the hip barbecue places are doing those, and those are now being shipped all over the world to replicate this Texas style of barbecue.
I see.
Over that offset smoker. Now the pit barrel style smoker, This is a good smoker for someone who's just getting started. And literally, when I say pit barrel, it is literally, take a barrel from, like Caroline uses for barrel race, take a metal one for barrel racing, that size.
Yeah.
And you make it into a smoker, right? So they drill holes in the bottom of it to get airflow in. They put a pan down on the bottom where you can put charcoal and wood. And then you got a water pan in there to block the direct heat. And then you got a grill up there. And then they have a lid with a little vent to let the air out. And you can put charcoal in there. You can just let it go, and it'll cook, and you get great results. You don't have to mess with it at all. And it's low and slow, so you can do briskets or whatever. The offset smoker, on the other hand, you're constantly feeding the fire, right? You got a live fire, so you're feeding wood into it, and you're managing it, and you got to make sure you got airflow and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Pit barrel, it's a no-brainer. So that's a great way to get started.
Now, is that what you were doing the other night when you said, I'm going to go out there and start the fire at 10 p.m., and then kind of work it all night?
Yeah, I was going to use the offset smoker that night.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Got
and that's a very common thing. Now, I ended up not doing it that night. I started it the next morning and did it all day.
I see.
But that is a very common technique, because if you do it all night, part of I'll get into some of the techniques on cooking, but part of it is when you do a long and slow cook, then you need to have a long rest time. You need to set that meat aside literally in a cooler and let it rest for hours, and it becomes super tender. So it's all about timing, because a lot of these cooks will take 8 to 12 hours just to cook the thing, and then you want to let it rest for 2, 4, 6 hours. 8 hours is great. So you're looking at a 20-hour process to get great barbecue. So a lot of guys will start at midnight, let it cook all night, let it rest all day, then it's ready for dinner the next evening.
And see, that's news to me, because I thought once you cook it for a long time and it's real soft and ready to go, then dive in. I've never heard of resting the meat after you cook it. Yeah, no, resting the meat is a technique you should use with all of cooking. Right? Even when I grill a steak, if you grill a steak, let me put it to you this way. Have you ever taken a piece of meat and, put it in the refrigerator, you look at it the next day and it's kind of like got the fat built up on it, or if the juices are kind of just coagulated, right? Right. So if you take a piece of meat straight off the grill or straight off the smoker and you slice it, those juices are piping hot. Yeah. And if you slice it right then, all your juice is going to run out onto the board, onto the cutting board. And when you eat the steak, it's going to actually be dry, right? Oh. So for a steak, you want to let a steak rest for like 10 to 15 minutes. It doesn't get cold, but the juices kind of stop running, and they start to soak back into the meat. Huh. And then when you slice into that steak, you're going to have a really juicy steak, because all the juices are still inside of that meat. They're not just going to run out, right? Well, no wonder all my steaks taste like a big fat piece of crap, because I grill it, and then I just throw it on everybody's plate, and then they just start chomping on it, and they're like, wow, it's like eating cardboard, Dad. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so one thing is the rest. The rest helps. And then, with a big, when you're cooking a brisket or a big pork shoulder, those are, 10, 12, 15, pound pieces of meat. Right. So you can literally let those rest, and the more you let them rest, the more they continue to, those juices settle down, they redistribute throughout that big old muscle, and they actually tenderize a little bit more. So you get that really tender, kind of piece of meat there. Well, I hope you listeners have enjoyed that little piece of wisdom, because I had no idea. So thank you for that, Kevin. That's one of the best things you can do, is rest that steak. And for a steak, it's like 10 minutes. And I'll talk about some of the techniques, cooking techniques later. But, one thing you can do is, you grill a steak, set it aside as it's resting for about 10 minutes. That gives you 10 minutes to make a sauce, right? So a lot of times I go make a sauce in a pan, and then by the time the sauce is done, the steak is rested, you put the steak on the sauce, and boom, you got a really cool outcome there. That sounds fantastic. Okay, good. So then the third style of smoker is what I call the bullet style, which is similar to a pit barrel, but it's kind of like the Weber Smoky Mountain, but it's the same thing. If you want to get started with smoking, you don't have a clue what you're doing. Basically it's like a 3-level thing. You put charcoal on the bottom. It's got a couple of racks and a water pan. You basically put charcoal, you threw a few chunks of wood in there that'll give you a smoke. You put your meat on there and you just forget about it. And 8 hours later, it's done. Then you rest it.
Okay.
So that's the bullet style. So those are smokers. The other two style, the next one would be what is called a Kamado style grill or smoker. Kamado style is, Kamado is a Japanese term.
Right.
And so these kind of cookers came out of Japan. And these are like heavy, thick ceramic walled cookers.
Oh.
And they're very efficient with airflow. And so this is like the Big Green Egg. So I own a Big Green Egg. Huh. It's a Kamado style grill. Another really popular brand is called Kamado Joe.
Okay.
And the advantage to these cookers is they're really thick ceramic. And so once they heat up, they hold the heat for a long period of time, right?
Oh.
And because that ceramic stays hot, it uses very little charcoal to keep going.
Huh.
So with my Big Green Egg, I can fill it up with charcoal. I can, fire it up, you control the airflow on the top and the bottom, and you get it to the right temperature that you want. And then I can cook like for 8-10 hours on the Big Green Egg. And at the end of it, I still have most of the charcoal left because it's such an efficient cooker because of the insulation of the chamber and things of that nature. So those are called Kamado style. Okay. And those are very versatile cookers. So they can be smokers, they can be grills, they can be ovens, you can do pizza on them. You can do just about anything on a Kamado style cooker.
Yeah, I was blown away that day that you told me you were going to make a pizza in your Big Green Egg. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah. Okay. So those will range from, low and slow cooking all the way up to, you can get them up 700-800 degrees, which is great for pizza or great for searing steaks.
Oh, wow.
Or you can keep them down in the low range for briskets. So the throwdown that we did a couple weeks ago, it was the offset smoker.
Okay.
My Lone Star Grill's offset smoker.
Right.
Which is that style of smoker where you're feeding the fire on the side.
Right.
Against the Big Green Egg, which is a totally different style of cooker, right? Which is, low airflow, super insulated heat. And so the throwdown was, if we use the same, type of ribs, the same seasoning, same temperature on both, which one comes out better, right? Because of the totally different cooking style. Right. So that's what that was about.
Yeah, but tell you thought that everybody would like the Big Green Egg better.
Yeah, I thought Big Green Egg would come out a little more juicy, but it didn't. I thought the Big Green Egg would be more juicy and less of a smoke flavor. And I thought the offset might be not quite as juicy, but maybe have more smoke flavor because you have the live fire there.
Right.
And it was the exact opposite result.
I'll be darned.
The offset was, much more juicy and tender. It had a good smoke flavor, but the Big Green Egg had more smoke flavor, but it was a little bit drier.
Huh. I'll be darned.
So it was not what I expected. Yeah.
Well, they enjoyed both of them. Andrew gave me a report after, and he said they enjoyed them immensely, both of them.
Yeah, they were both good. Like if you had have eaten each of those ribs individually, you would have been like, "Wow, that's a great rib." But then doing it side by side, you could really tell the difference between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the next kind of category is really popular right now, and this is called pellet grills.
Okay.
Right, and these kind of are designed to, because to get the best smoke flavor, burning a live fire in an offset where you got a real fire going, it burns really clean, that gives you the best smoke flavor.
Okay.
Right? So the pellet grill is designed to burn a live fire, right? But it is literally like an oven. You go out and you say, I want to put this at 275 degrees, and it's automated and has a computer in there. It has a fan to feed the airflow.
Oh, wow.
And it will maintain the temperature for you just like an oven would. but it's burning a live fire in there using little tiny wood pellets that are compressed.
Okay.
So basically you buy a big bag of pellets, you pour it in there, it burns that. So that's a great option for people that basically just want to get, really good tasting barbecue, but they don't want to mess with a fire or charcoal or trying to manage it. You literally, it's just like cooking something in the oven, and you get really, really good results. Now, the smoke flavor is not going to be as good as an offset smoker or maybe like a Big Green Egg because you don't have as big of a fire. You got a little tiny fire, you'll still get...
Are we talking about those, is it called Traeger?
Traeger is the one of the name brands for that. Yeah, there's Traeger.
You see a ton of commercials for that, and those are they seem expensive. And apparently, there's an app you can put on your phone and just kind of dial the thing in with an app. That seems very fancy.
Yeah, well, and they're not super expensive. You're looking at $400 or $500, and I'll get into some of the pricing here.
Okay.
They're not super expensive, actually, in the whole grand scheme of things.
I see.
And they are very convenient because you can control it from your app. They connect to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And it's just a really great option if you just want to, go grab a brisket, throw some salt and pepper on it, throw it on there, set it at 275, and just let it go. And you can stick a temperature probe in the meat, too. And so on your phone, you can tell what temperature the meat is, right? And based on the temperature of the meat, that's when you know when it's done. Okay. So you can monitor the whole process remotely, and you can, when the meat gets done, you can say, okay, Traeger, now turn this down to 165 and just keep it warm for me for the next 10 hours until I'm ready to eat it. And it's it's just beautiful. Yeah.
God, that is fancy.
Yeah, so it's automated, very convenient. But you won't get quite as good of a smoke flavor on those. I mean, you can get really good, but not quite as good as you would get on, if you're using real, burning big logs, right? Instead of little pellets. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, the last category is the gas grill. Just the old traditional hook a propane tank up to it, and you got some burners, and, you're off and running. Right?
Yeah, and that's what I have. Is that is that the reason why mine are... Everything I cook is terrible? Is because it's just gas grill?
No. You can get some really good results off a gas grill.
Okay, great. Okay, that's just user error.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to technique.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
so you've got a gas grill. My equipment that I have back here, I have a Lone Star Grills offset smoker.
Okay.
Lone Star Grills, these are handmade down in the Woodlands area, just north of Houston.
And it weighs just over 900 pounds?
It does, yeah. It's a big boy. Really
I know that from personal experience. Yeah.
I was going to rent an engine crane to lift it up after that incident.
Yeah, Kevin, unfortunately, it fell over, and he was going to rent it. He called me, and he said, hey, you know anything about engine cranes? I'm like, what's the problem? And
actually, what I said was, do you have an engine crane I can borrow? And you're like, what?
Yeah, no, I don't. Remember the Franken truck project and how awful that was? I'm not dealing with engines anymore. Anyway, so we got it. Me and Cole, one of my twins, came over.
Well, yeah,
help Kevin pick it back up. But that sucker's heavy, but awesome.
Cole, who has superhuman strength, like with one pinky lifted it up.
Yeah, and that was making fun of the two old guys.
Yeah.
No,
so Lone Star Grills.
Yeah, that's a beautiful piece of equipment.
Yeah, really high quality, handmade, super thick steel, so it keeps the heat in, really good airflow. But that's an offset, right? So I manage that fire.
Okay.
Then I've got a Big Green Egg XL, which is the Kamado style. So that's, super thick ceramic. So I love that thing. I do, everything on that. Smoking, grilling, you name it.
Yeah.
On that thing. And then I've also got a Oklahoma Joe Longhorn. And this Longhorn is basically a big steel device. And half of it is a gas grill. And so I've got a gas grill there, and I'll use that. If I just want to cook something real quick in the week, I'll turn that on. Half of it is a gas grill. The other half of it is actually a small offset smoker So I can do offset smoking on that for smaller things.
Oh, wow.
And then in the firebox of that, where you build the fire, it has a place to put grills in there. And that's a great charcoal grill also.
Okay.
So between those three, I've got gas grill, I've got multiple charcoal grill options, I've got multiple offset smoking options. So those cover, just about the full spectrum, of anything I want to do out there. And the Lone Star Grills has a griddle on top of its firebox. So like a flat hibachi style thing. So I can do hibachi out there. Huh. And then this Oklahoma Joe has a little gas burner, so I can put a pan out there, do all that. So I get just about everything I need between those three out there.
Wow.
And then the other thing I have is actually a fire pit that's made for cooking also. Yeah. So it's got a grill, and it's got a little sear plate that goes around the top of that. So occasionally I'll just build a fire and throw the grill on there and just kind of cook an old school open fire type of thing.
Yeah, but that's that smokeless one, right?
It's smokeless, yeah.
Yeah, which is awesome. So the physics there, they don't add up. So you have a fire and somehow it doesn't smoke. I don't understand that, but
yeah. So it has holes around the top edge of that fire pit, and it's got hollow sides. And so when you first build it, you'll see smoke coming out.
Yeah.
But then as the entire frame heats up, then hot air starts coming out of the little holes around the top.
Okay.
And then that causes what's called a secondary combustion, which is another fire.
Oh.
Right. So as those flames rise up, that oxygen hits it, that catches on fire, and it burns that smoke right there.
Oh, my gosh.
So it ends up being a really clean fire. So the flames are super tall on it. It looks really cool. And then you don't get... It still has smoke because clean smoke still comes out, but you don't get the dirty, nasty... smoke in your face kind of thing when you're sitting around it. So it's
awesome.
Really cool technology.
So you can put a grill over the top of that once you get that fire pit going, and then cook, whatever. That's probably less precise though, right?
It's less precise, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has a grill that you can raise up and down. I can raise it up a couple of feet off the fire, lower it back down. But yeah, cooking over an open fire is much less precise because you got literally... just open flames there, so you gotta really, manage it. But it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I'll be okay. Yeah. Well, regardless, you've learned a lot on that as well. So, because I remember you had another fire pit that you built kind of out by your barn, and I don't know. Did you ever cook stuff on it?
Yeah, I actually made a grill to put over there. I bought some expanded metal at Lowe's and some rebar and baling wire, and I literally made a grill that I would lay over that fire pit and cook over it. That was a lot of fun.
Okay, so walk us through. So what have you abandoned like that fire pit to get to where you are today? So you have kind of your full barbecue pitmaster arsenal of tools now that sounds like you're really, really comfortable with. But what have you kind of experimented with and kind of cast away over your learning time?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I had was just a char griller gas grill kind of thing.
Okay.
When I was young, and that was a great little gas grill, but it was a little thinner, metal. But I used that, and then I gave that away to I think my brother-in-law. He took that over. And then Kendra's always bought me grills over the years, right? So when we lived in Flower Mound, she bought me actually a smoker, and it was I didn't even ask for it, but she went and got it, and it was called the brand was called New Braunfels, like from New Braunfels, Texas, and they don't make those anymore. Huh. And this was an awesome smoker, and it was very compact, and it was also a grill, so it had kind of everything in it, really super thick metal, and I used that thing. It finally died literally last year. So I had it over 20 years. Okay. That I used that thing. And then I had a gas grill that she bought me back at the old place too. That, I used it, significantly. And then Andrew turned that into a coffee roaster a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
He bought a drum and put on it. Yeah,
I remember watching you guys kind of in your early days of coffee roasting, and you used that with a spinner and a motor. And it was very cool.
Yeah, Andrew bolted a gearbox on it and a power supply and a little switch and everything. So that got converted to a coffee roaster a few years ago, and now Andrew's a professional roaster, so he doesn't use that anymore. I got rid of that last year too.
Okay.
But then it was the big green egg. Kendra bought me that maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I've had that for quite a while. And then a couple years ago for Christmas, she got me that Oklahoma Joe kind of dual gas grill smoker thing.
Wow.
And then this past year for Christmas, she got me the Lone Star grill. So yeah, Kendra's always, been kind of the one, funding the the research and development and everything here. So she's been awesome.
Well, and stuff. I can't remember, but I thought she got you for Father's Day or your birthday the smokeless fire pit too. So,
that's right. Yeah, that was for Father's Day. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, so man, that's awesome, Kevin. I'm telling you. Hey, everybody out there, write in the comments section all of your questions to Kevin. I'm just kidding.
Put them in the comments below.
We don't know where that is, but I bet there's a bunch of them out there. Y'all ought to call or text Kevin with your questions because I'm telling you, when he gets busy on that and when I get to taste that, it is stinking awesome, the stuff that you put out there. So that's why I would encourage you. I mean, I know it's a hobby and it's just something you do for fun, but man, I don't know why you wouldn't. If it's fun, go to some of those competitions and show off your talent. Because you've really grown into a true pit master. So very awesome.
There's a lot of resources out there. There's a big barbecue community online.
Okay.
I'm in a group called North Texas Barbecue Addicts,
nice.
Which is on Facebook.
Okay.
It's like 150,000 plus people now.
Oh, gosh.
And it's kind of grown beyond just North Texas to really being a global group. And so, I'll post things on there, pictures of what I'm cooking, people will comment. It's just a bunch of dudes, having fun.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of YouTubers out there that I've watched and learned just obsessively, over the years, right? So there's a guy called Malcolm Reed. He's a legend in, competition barbecue, and he has a YouTube channel called How to Barbecue Right, and I've watched him for years and years and years.
Wow.
There's Mad Scientist Barbecue. He's a guy. So Malcolm Reed is actually in Mississippi.
Okay.
So he's down in the South. There's a guy called Mad Scientist Barbecue. He's out in California. He's from Kentucky, but he lives in California. He does a lot of Texas-style videos. And then there's lots of dudes here in Texas. There's a guy, T-Roy Cooks, down in Austin. There's a guy, Baby Back Maniac, who's here in the Dallas area. So he's great. And then there's a guy over in Waxahachie. His channel's called Meat Church. And he does all kinds of videos, and he's got a great setup. So,
I think you sent me one of his videos that we watched. Was that the one of the whole hog
cooking?
Yeah, that was the whole hog.
That was a Meat Church video. Yeah,
it was 62 cinder blocks. I remember that. We could set
really
up
honed in on that.
Well, because I don't have 62. I probably have 30, but I don't have 62. And but if we create the whole hog pit, then I'd have to go out and get at least 32 more cinder blocks for us to set that up.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, if you're going to get started, one thing I didn't do early on was, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I just go out there and throw something on the grill or whatever. But over the last several years, I've actually started learning actual cooking techniques.
Okay.
Right? And so if you want to learn cooking techniques, that really helps because it sends across all styles of cooking, right?
I see.
So I learned a lot of French cooking techniques. I learned a lot of French sauce making techniques, right? And those all apply to barbecue or any other style of cooking, right? Oh. So I would definitely say, focus on technique, because if you learn technique, then you can apply it, to barbecue or anything else, right? So as an example, right, I had a brisket I wasn't quite happy with a couple weeks ago. I took it off, even though I knew it wasn't ready on one end. It was good on the other, so we ate off the other. The end that was kind of tough, I said, okay, I'm going to use a braising technique to actually break that down. So the next day, I put it back in a big pot, and I just created this liquid with some wine and beer and sauce and hot sauce and just braised it, right?
Oh.
if I didn't know that braising technique, I wouldn't have known how to do that. But I knew that if you braise meat, it's going to break it down.
I see.
So that broke completely down, shredded. We made tacos out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Sandwiches, amazing, right? So
I
you
bet
take
it
a
was
brisket
wonderful,
that's kind of tough. Yeah, it was great. So if you know those kind of techniques, that helps a lot. And there's a lot to learn there. And same with sauces. If you know how to make a sauce, there's like 5 different French mother sauces is what they call them. And those are the basis for all sauces that you can make.
Okay.
Once you learn that, you can make barbecue sauce, you can make macaroni and cheese, you can make everything off of these basic sauces. So
wow.
I would say learn that, and then learn the science behind it. There's a reaction that happens when heat hits the surface of meat. It's called the Maillard reaction.
Okay.
And that Maillard reaction is what causes meat to turn brown.
Oh.
It's what also causes bread to turn brown or cookies to turn brown. And that adds flavor, right? So once you learn that, you can kind of start to look at the meat that you're cooking, and you can start to cook by color. So I will cook by color a lot. Huh. And when a meat hits a certain color in the smoker, then I'll wrap it up. And I know I've got the color and the smoke on it that I want, so I've got that flavor.
Yeah.
And then you just wrap it up and you just make it tender from there. Right?
I see.
So that's another technique. Once you get that down, you can apply that to low and slow, to steaks, to everything else, right? So cooking by color. And then there's direct grilling versus indirect grilling. I would suggest you learn that. So direct is straight over the heat. That's where you want to do steaks. Indirect is low and slow for like briskets. And then if you're going to get into smoking, if you're not using a pellet or something like that, you got to learn about fire management, right? How to manage a fire, how to make sure you got oxygen in there. Because if you got a nasty fire that's super smoky, that tastes really bad. It tastes bitter. So you got to constantly manage that, make sure it's clean burning and get a good flavor on it. So
I see.
I would say I didn't focus on technique early on. I was just focused on trying to make recipes. Don't worry about recipes. Learn the technique. Once you learn the technique, you can do any recipe. You can make up your own recipes.
Right.
So that's a piece of advice I would share with everyone.
That's fantastic. The only other thing that I would add is, and it's one thing that I don't know, is the different cuts of meat. Now that I'm basically growing my own beef, when I take it in to have the cow processed, I don't have an appreciation for the types of cuts, that I prefer, because I'm not a griller, I'm not a pit master like you are, Kevin. And I would think that if I had that appreciation like you do, you're going to have a select type and thickness and things like that I just don't have an appreciation for.
Yep, that's right. The cuts are important. And then on steaks, the thickness is important, right? I want a thicker steak, right? I don't want a thin steak.
Right.
Because a thin steak will cook super fast and get dry. But if you got a thicker steak, then you basically use both of these techniques that I'm talking about.
I see.
Right? So with give me a thick steak, 3 inches thick. And then what I can do is I can either start over the hot fire and create that Maillard reaction and get a nice flavor on the outside, but it's still going to be raw on the inside. So then you move it over to indirect heat and you just let it cook slowly there until it's done.
Wow.
Right? You can also do the opposite. You can take a thick steak, you can start on indirect and kind of smoke it, let it get that smoky flavor. And then at the end, you put it over the hot coals, get that Maillard reaction, get a nice crust on it. You get a very different flavor, right?
Wow.
But if you get a thick steak like that, then you're really in control over how well done that steak's going to be, right? So if you have certain people that want it rare or medium rare or well done, you can totally control that. Whereas with a thin steak, you can control it, but it's harder to control.
Right.
Because as soon as you put it on the fire, it's going to start cooking through. And you got a very short window of time to keep it from getting tough.
Oh, but
yeah, so thick steaks, and then knowing the cuts of meat, which ones are, heavily used muscles like briskets and roasts that you want to cook slow and low versus, steaks and tenderloins that you want to, just grill off and be done.
See man, you got a lot going on up in your noggin there, Kevin, that most of that just goes right over my head because that's fantastic. See, I told you people you'd enjoy this. That's good stuff, Kev. Well, what else?
Yeah.
You got any kind of closing thoughts? Because this is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
listening to you.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is if you want to get started, right? Get some good equipment, but you don't have to get expensive equipment, right? Yeah. And just to give you the range, probably the best, least expensive option is the Weber kettle.
Yeah.
Right, because you can get one of those for about $175. They look like a grill, but you can actually cut your coals to one side. You can actually grill and smoke on those. They're really, really, really versatile. Okay. Right, so those are about $175 for the lower end, which will last you forever.
Wow.
And then for smokers, that Weber Smoky Mountain that I talked about, or the Pit Barrel, those are great to get started because you don't have to manage a fire. You don't have to worry about anything. You just kind of start it up and let it go.
Nice.
And those are about usually in the $350 range.
Okay.
And then if you want an offset smokers are generally expensive, but you can get started with like Oklahoma Joe or Old Country Pecos. Those are like in the $350 to $450 range.
I see.
And those are like entry-level offsets. And then they go up from there. You get thicker metal and bigger cooking space and bigger fireboxes and stuff like that.
Right.
But if you want to get started with smoking, I would say like a Weber Smoky Mountain or a Pit Barrel would be the place to start because you're going to get good results. You're not going to get frustrated with it.
Right.
And, it'll just kind of encourage you to go deeper. Or the Weber kettle, you'll get really good results with that. Or, a pellet grill. Right? Pellet grill is kind of the ultimate no-brainer, right? Yeah. Put it back there. You don't have to learn any technique. It's just like using an oven, right? So if that's your gig, you can do that, and you can get really good results off of those too. So
so just some takeaways for me is it sounds like you need to put the work in to try to understand the techniques, try to really understand and kind of watch others so that you gain some of that wisdom. Just like listening to you, there's things that I've already learned out of this. Get the right equipment, and then just experiment and play with it and be patient. Because it seems like that's what I listen to you. You're very patient and you try things and maybe it doesn't work. And next thing you know, you got it figured out, which is pretty amazing. So,
yeah. And I like I like the science of it. I like the technology of it.
Right.
I like technique. I think it's a relaxing hobby, and I love food.
Well,
so it's kind of the best of all of those worlds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
hey, so I wanted to give you a quick barbecue quiz. If you got a second.
I'm ready.
Let's see what you know about barbecue here. Okay.
The Maillard.
This is a short quiz. All right. Yeah. Oh, dude, I shouldn't have given you that answer. Okay.
Maillard.
So if you remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the first one. What's another name for a pork shoulder?
No idea.
Pork butt.
No, didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
Pork butt.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
So there's two parts of the shoulder.
Yeah, the butt's way
it's
back
like the
there.
Butt. It's like the butt end of the shoulder. Right?
Okay.
So if you hear somebody talking about a pork butt, they're talking about a pork shoulder, not the actual pig's butt. But because I'm immature, when I cook pork butts, I just love to talk about my butt all day. I'll tell Kendra, hey, I got up early and I rubbed my butt this morning. And I put it on the,
Okay.
Or hey, my butt's been out sweating in 200-degree heat all day, but it still smells good. It smells great.
Okay, that's disgusting. All right, I'm 0 for 1. Okay.
All right. What does basting mean?
Doesn't that mean where you're like brushing juice onto the meat?
Yes. You got it.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
One for 2.
1 for 2. Okay. Where do burnt ends come from? What cut of meat?
Oh, you told me about this with a tri-tip, but I don't remember.
Comes from a brisket.
Yeah, I don't know that.
And it comes from the point end of the brisket usually. And back in the day, those edges would kind of burn and they'd kind of chop them up and just give them away for free.
Yeah.
And then everybody loved them. So now there's like all kinds of recipes for burnt ends and it's a whole thing now.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, 1 for 3.
1 for 3. White barbecue sauce. Which state is popular for having actually white barbecue sauce?
New Jersey.
Not red or brown.
New Jersey.
No, that would be Alabama.
Alabama? What are those people
Alabama.
thinking?
There was a place called Big Bob Gibson's Barbecue in Alabama, and he created a white sauce, and they create chicken. This is back in the early 1900s, but they still there. They take chicken, they smoke a whole chicken. Then at the end, they dip the whole thing in this big white sauce, and it tastes amazing.
Wow.
I've done it before. It just tastes incredible.
Huh.
Okay.
That reminds me of like dipping steak in fettuccine sauce. That sounds kind of gross. I don't know. Okay, 1 for 4.
Okay, the crunchy exterior of barbecue meat is called what?
The Reynard crust.
Kind of close. It's called bark.
Bark.
It's called bark.
Yeah. 1 for 5. I missed. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
Either.
So when you cook a brisket or a pork butt, you're trying to develop that bark on the outside, and then you wrap it up, and it gets tender. Okay.
I didn't know that.
What's the Texas crutch?
Whiskey?
No, that could be a crutch. Yeah, that's a good guess.
That's my first thought.
No. Now, in barbecue, Texas crutch is when you wrap it in foil.
Texas crutch. Well, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Just so that it maintains heat, moisture, flavor.
Yep, and it cooks faster. It kickstarts. So, if you're going to cook a brisket, it's going to take 12 hours. Like I said earlier, you can cook it to color, right? So once it gets to the right color and you got that bark, right? You could leave it on there and cook it, but it's going to take forever.
Yeah.
You wrap it in foil, that kickstarts the cook into gear and finishes the cook significantly faster.
Oh, wow.
But you still maintain the tenderness and the juiciness and all that stuff. So that's called the Texas crutch.
Texas crutch. All right, 1 for 6. Okay, I'm doing pretty good.
All right, what's a shiner?
Shiner Bock, that's a kind of Texas beer.
It's a beer. That is a barbecue thing, but that's not the answer we were looking for.
A shiner or a black eye?
It's kind of like that. Yeah, it's like if you're cooking a rack of ribs, sometimes a certain rib will cook down to where there's a bone sticking out.
Oh.
Right? That's called a shiner when you got a bone sticking out.
No, I would say that I'm correct on my 2 answers. Either a black eye is a shiner or a shiner Bock.
That is true.
But I'll go 1 for 7 because it didn't meet your answer.
Those
1
are
for
not
7.
the barbecue answers we were looking for.
Right.
Okay. What type of wood is not used to smoke meat?
Bodark.
Is bodark a softwood?
It's one that sparks because as I cut up bodark trees up at our place in Oklahoma, it sparks when I put a chainsaw through it. So I would not advise using that in a barbecuing venue.
Does bodark have a fruit or a nut on it?
Green. It's got the horse apples. So
it might be okay. So softwoods are not good for smoking. So pine or something like that.
Okay.
So hardwoods are good. Softwoods taste like crap. And then the rule is if it has a nut or a fruit on it, you're good.
So you're telling me a pine trees you don't want to use for.
No, nasty.
Oh,
nasty.
Okay. Yeah, that's got a pretty pungent smell to it. Those pine trees.
That's right. That's exactly why it tastes terrible.
Yeah, I can see the other one just because when you burn them, that's a real aromatic smell to it. But pine is that's a strong smell. Okay, 1 for 8. So because I don't think you called out bodark specifically.
Well, if it's a soft wood, then you were right. So
I'm telling you, it would explode because of the sap in it is explosive. You don't want that.
I will take that advice.
Yeah.
What part of a cow does the brisket come from?
I should know this. Shouldn't it be back on the back hips? The back kind of butt area?
No, it's not. The brisket is basically if you took your pectoral muscle plus your muscle on your shoulder.
Oh.
That whole area, that's a brisket.
That's a brisket. I'll be darned.
That's a brisket. Yeah,
right.
And they're shaped just like that.
Okay. All right, 1 for 9.
And cows don't have collarbones, and so all their weight is supported on that, so that's why it's really, really tough stuff.
I'll be darned. Okay, 1 for
all right,
9.
Last question here. Come on, man, you can do it.
I think so.
Baby back ribs are also called what? Let me give you some. We'll make this one multiple choice. Okay, baby back ribs are called what? Mini ribs, loin back ribs, brisket rack, or mini rack?
I have no idea. So I'll just take
back.
1 for 10. It's loin back?
Yeah, that's why I was saying loin back several times.
You did say it several times. I should have taken that in. That's how dense I am. 1 for 10. Holy crap. Man, I suck at barbecuing.
Right. Well, we need to hang out, man. Give you some barbecue lessons.
I do hang out with
really
you.
fast.
That's why I just eat what you cook, and that way I don't have to worry about it.
That's true.
Anyway.
That's true.
Well, hey, thank you, Kevin, for enlightening us. Appreciate you guys listening to us tonight, and we'll bring back more wisdom from Kevin on barbecuing in future episodes. But thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the insight tonight.
You bet. If y'all have any other barbecue techniques, put them in the comments below.
Yeah, do that.
It's someday someone will find them.
Somebody in the ether will find those comments. Al Gore, when he invented the internet, maybe he'll
He's
find
got all
the comments.
He's got all the comments in a lockbox. Remember how you used to talk about the lockbox?
Oh,
He's got the lockbox with all the comments from the internet. So.
Yeah, maybe so. All right, well, y'all have a good week.
All right, thanks everybody. Look us up, like us, subscribe, give us a review, tell everybody. Adios. Bye.
Adios.
All right.